Or live?
Live, yeah. It says it now.
Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us here for our panel discussion. Today we have JJ Coughlin, Steve Covey, and Kurt Dusterdick. Kurt is having a little bit of issue getting on to the platform with us. And while we're waiting for him, JJ and Steve are going to go ahead and introduce themselves and talk a little bit about their experience. And I'm going to try to get Kurt on the line. So JJ, please go ahead and get us started while I get Kurt online.
All right, be glad to. Welcome everybody. As George allowed, my name is JJ Coughlin, and this discussion is about the Transportation Security Councils and how we work together and network. And I'm the chairman of the Southwest Transportation Security Council that has been in existence since 1999. And along the way, we do a bunch of partnerships and network with the other councils. So I'll pass it over to Steve and let him tell you, let him introduce himself, and then hopefully we'll get Kurt on the air here.
Hi, everybody. My name is Steve Covey. I work for the National Insurance Crime Bureau, and I'm part of the Midwest Cargo Security Council. A little bit of my background: I retired from the Illinois State Police at the end of 2013. I was there for about 28 years, the last 6 or 7 of which I worked on a cargo theft task force and supervised 6 agents who, for the last 5 of those 6 or 7 years, did cargo theft investigations. So I have a little bit of background on it. When we talk about the councils today, when I first started going to some of the council meetings around here, I realized that it's been around for about 20 years, but it was very loose knit. In the last couple of years, several of us in the Chicago area have kind of tightened it up a little bit and recently got incorporated and turned it into a nonprofit. So things are looking up, but anyway, that's my background and how our council is going right now.
I appreciate it, gentlemen. And I'm speaking with Kurt here. He's just having some technical difficulties, so we're going to give him one more chance to get signed in here. But in the meantime, there's a big disparity on how the two of you actually started your security council, because JJ, you started yours really back before the ability to communicate through email and online was available. So could you please tell us how you got started, JJ, and some of the ways or reasons even that you started your security council?
All right, you're cutting out a little bit, George. So I didn't get the whole thing, but I believe I understand what you were asking. In honesty, the way we started is just because of the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And anybody that's familiar with this area realizes that there is 28 or so different jurisdictions just within the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And so our goal originally, myself and then 5 other persons who worked in the transportation industry that were ex-law enforcement, we just started trying to put together a network to where we could communicate in our little part of the world. And over time, the network just grew, obviously beyond that location, beyond the DFW area, and then into the state, and then even beyond that further. But it's been step by step to work with industry and work with the law enforcement folks and gather information and gather a network and document everyone who can and will be helpful when we have an incident within the industry. So it's like Steve over at the Midwest. When I first heard they had a cargo group, I was on the phone pretty quick trying to hook him into the Southwest Council as a network and as a resource. So over time, every chance you get, you just building the network and reaching out, so that when you need some help, you actually can call someone who will actually help you. So that's kind of how we started. It's kind of how it's grown. And actually, with the Midwest coming on, and the Eastern region was already in business back then. And then when North Carolina or the Carolinas and Virginia group, and in each group as they come on, it just expands the network, expands some information share, and allows us all to be better and to respond, recover, and work done in a proper manner without too much delay.
And JJ, can you tell everybody, how has your organization grown? How many members do you currently have?
You know, I don't know the exact number without counting them. I know that industry members, I probably have in the range of 60 due-paying companies that I would say that are members. And then I would say that I have probably in my law enforcement network throughout the U.S. and Canada, I probably have about 1,100 different contacts in my distribution list.
And Steve, could you please, now you had a different trajectory, I guess, because you were taking over a council that really, like you said, had been kind of very loose. It hadn't been really, I don't think it's really been that active until you came, but you've had an opportunity to grow that. Could you kind of share that experience of how you came into it, with it not having a lot of excitement, not having a lot of momentum, and then turning that around, please?
Yeah, would have been in 2007, 2008 when I attended my first council meeting. I think there was about 10 people at the table, and my second council, there was 5 people at the table, and there just, I don't know if it was an apathy thing, but there just wasn't a lot of interest. But when our cargo theft unit on the police side, when we started working with the private sector a little more, we kind of grew that foundation and got more interest in it. We worked with the guys that were running the council at the time. From that, for the next 5 years or so, it was kind of loose knit. Just in the last year or two, we've kind of grown it. So as of now, we're probably maybe between 100 and 150 members. We definitely don't get that many people to show up to the meetings, which we have quarterly, but a lot of the people stay in contact. There's contacts and information shared all the time. So it's coming along. We still have our hurdles, which I could get into a little bit later, but it is coming along.
So one of the reasons why we're having these conversations today is this idea of putting together a transportation security council, and especially having them in regions, is, you know, within the U.S., I think the transportation security councils have been extremely successful in providing that platform for collaboration between law enforcement, private, and corporate industries in creating very robust and resilient supply chain security programs for organizations, but also in helping organizations recover cargo in the event that they have a theft. And there's a lot of places outside the US who have nothing like this. So, you know, kind of as you mentioned, Steve, you know, there are some challenges. This isn't an easy process to go through sometimes. Could you give us a few of the challenges that you faced?
Yeah, and I was going to say too, George, and JJ will attest to this, both of us being former police officers, in the cargo world, we couldn't do cargo theft investigations without help from the private sector. And I figured that out pretty quick within a few months of us starting up. We just couldn't do it. We didn't have the resources. And on the law enforcement side, it's only gotten worse. So then getting back to the problems, one of the problems just within our council, I guess, is trying to, I don't know if I want to use recruit, but to get attendance and participation from some of the law enforcement people. I personally work with probably 2 or 3 dozen local detectives and see them monthly for different cases that we're working on, not all cargo related, but I want to make that clear to them that with my company, I'm there to help them for other issues too. And then that kind of reciprocates where If I need a hand on a cargo case, then they're there to help me. So that's on the contact part of it. With getting the participation, though, the kind of a solution to that problem with getting the police involved in the training to police officers, and we've kind of identified in the Chicago area, it seems like there'll be a handful of detectives in any certain suburb. There'll be one, maybe two detectives that the cargo cases will be shipped to. They'll catch those cases. So we kind of have our guys we want involved identified already. So we offer training to them, and not just those people, but any other officers that want to get involved. So that's kind of a remedy. We've talked about attending some of the various police chiefs meetings and offering what we have between contacts, assistance for their investigations and things of that nature. Basically, the other problem that we're facing right now within the council is just on the upstart. We're in the process of starting up a website. So we're trying to figure out some basic things about what information we want on there. There'll be a myriad of confirmation. We want to talk about or have available to people different theft information, maybe some intelligence of what's going on in the Chicago area, and things of that nature. But right now that's kind of a work in progress. We'll get there, but it's taking a little time.
Absolutely. And some of the things you're mentioning are so important for everybody to understand. And that is, first of all, this is a nonprofit organization. So you're working on the funds you receive from the memberships, if you offer membership fees or training fees for some of the classes that you might put on. And then with that, you have to fund a website. You have to figure out how you're going to get intelligence and add value to people so that they join your organization, so that they're getting the value. But JJ, if somebody belongs to your Transportation Security Council, do you find that they feel like they get the same information from all of them, or is there a reason why they should join every one of the Transportation Security Councils that we have in the United States?
Well, I would say it depends on their company, how they operate. Are they regional? Are they everywhere? How many people do they have? All those things matter. If you join them all, you can get a lot of information that's redundant, but it's better to get it more than once than not get it at all. I'd say it depends on the company, but if a company is a national company that operates all in the U.S. and they have, multiple security management people around the country, they should join each one in the region where they work. I always say that one thing about cargo theft is it's really pretty much a grassroots thing. And even though the councils were basically formed in many ways because the federal government or the FBI really kind of quit enforcing or quit being involved in investigations of interstate transportation shipment theft, things that they are with, was our way of kind of building the contacts and building a system to where we could, as company people, as industry people, were able to respond law enforcement standpoint and do it with people we knew that actually worked the crimes in those areas. Because unfortunately, what happens with a cargo theft is it may happen in Chicago or Bolingbrook, Illinois, but by the time everybody gets notified, it's already headed south and in Kentucky or somewhere. So if you don't have those connections down, the freeway, and who to notify and how to send your blasts and triage your systems, you're not have any recovery. We've learned how all this works, and we've learned how to communicate. We've learned how to share information, and we've learned how to network and call the right people. So that's really kind of what the situation is, and why we put it together, and why each council is so important. If something happens in Dallas, Texas, it doesn't do me much good to call some guy in Washington, D.C. So basically it's a grassroots, and being regional, it allows you to actually be much more responsive and much more collective of the information. And even in the system, my blast system, if I see something that happens in Bolingbrook, Chicago, or Bolingbrook, Illinois, I'm able to triage my system and send it out to people that are in my system that would be affected on it. I wouldn't send it to the Texas cops because it's really not relevant. So it's really is a regional type of thing, especially, you know, most of us have figured out that if you don't recover the cargo within 16 hours, you're not going to recover it. And pretty much, if you don't get it regionally, you're probably not going to get it. So over time, I think we've all kind of learned through the councils and really just through cargo theft and how the methods are of what we need to do to have the best chance to respond and recover.
And JJ, you were breaking up a little bit there. You said if you don't recover cargo in how many hours, it becomes very difficult to make the recovery?
I think most of it has shown that if you don't recover the cargo within 16 hours, you're never going to see it again. You're going to find the tractor and you're going to find the trailer, depending obviously on the type of crime it is, if it's not a fictitious pickup. But if it's a pure theft, full truckload theft where they steal the tractor and trailer, you're going to recover the equipment. But if you don't get the cargo within about 16 hours, you're probably never going to see it again. And so that's why regionally, or where it happens, it's so important to get that response in that area and get people looking for it as soon as possible.
And Steve, the Transportation Security Councils, where you're set up, it's no coincidence that it's the hot spots for cargo crime in the United States: Los Angeles, Dallas, Chicago, Atlanta, and so forth, Miami, Memphis, and the Northeast. Can you tell me, are the cargo crimes that are committed in your region a lot different than the cargo crimes that are committed in other regions? Are there different nuances that say, you know what, this is exactly why we need them regional? I see Steve's picture is frozen.
Time.
And Steve, JD, are you still with me, sir?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. Steve is, oh, maybe he's back.
Okay. I just want to lie.
I'll go back to JJ for an answer on that, actually.
So I think we're back. Start over.
Okay, Steve, are you with us again, sir? No. JJ, could you handle that question, please?
Hit it one more time, and I'm sure I can handle it. Just to remind me.
Sure. So, all the technical difficulties today. So, it's no coincidence that all of the Transportation Security Councils are in the hotspots where cargo crime occurs in the United States. So, you've got Los Angeles, Dallas, Chicago, Miami, Memphis, the Northeast.
Right.
Are the nuances, maybe Steve's back and maybe he can still handle this, but are the nuances of the cargo thefts in your region that different from the other regions?
For a second.
Okay, Steve, can you hear me?
Yeah, it's kind of an in and out thing. You were getting at the different councils in different cities, different areas across the country.
Right, because where you're all located, they're also the hotspots for cargo crime in the U.S. But are the cargo theft occurrences, are there different nuances from one region to another?
Yeah, I think some of the methods are similar. There's always new ones. I hear of things on the West Coast, for instance, that we don't see in Chicago. There's probably some things in Chicago we see that they don't see out there. In my case, we don't deal a lot with the West Coast. What we will deal with, though, on a kind of a inter-council perspective is the traveling bans. I know we've worked with JJ's group, the Southwest Council, with SETSI, and with some people on the East Coast regarding some of the traveling groups that were coming out, because the same criminals are hitting or Georgia, and they might be hitting down in Memphis, Tennessee. They're going to be in Chicago too. So just sharing that intelligence among the councils is very important for the private sector. Not to mention the police. It's extremely important there, but very important for the private sector, so they can kind of gear up and keep an eye out for who's in their neighborhood.
And Steve, do you see that you have local cargo theft gangs, or are they all pretty much really the organized, like a lot of the Cuban gangs, or do you have some that are very localized just for Chicago?
Yeah, there's definitely local ones around here, and it runs the gamut from people just breaking into trailers, just totally unorganized, just basically shoplifting out of a trailer, to some of the more organized groups. Kind of climbs the ladder. We'll have some people that will target products, whether it be electronics, food products, both are heavily targeted up here. Or we have the opportunists that it doesn't matter what they're looking for, they're going to steal it. They'll steal anything from toilet paper to over-the-counter items to tires. So all different kinds, but definitely local groups that concentrate on the Chicago area. What we are seeing too is that's kind of new to this area is some of the organized groups or gangs are leaving the state, not too far, but in the Midwest area, maybe going to Indianapolis or Toledo, Ohio, up to central Wisconsin. So they're crossing the border, but they're targeting freight terminals, trains. They're figuring out when the trains are stopping. So they are moving outside Chicago too, but based out of Chicago.
Well, very good. Actually, I want to get back to that train in a minute. Kurt Dusterdick, so are you with us, sir?
It took a while, but I'm with you.
It's a pleasure to see you again. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm glad to see that you made it on the call. I just want to take a minute then, please, Kurt, do us a favor and just kind of introduce yourself and talk about some of your experience and what you're doing with your council.
Well, Kurt Dusterdick, I am the Vice President of Loss Prevention for National Retail Systems. We operate terminals across the United States, predominantly along the East Coast and the West Coast. My previous experience in the transportation industry was when I was a security investigator with Roadway Express and YRC after Yellow bought Roadway. And I have been the chairman of the Eastern Region Transportation Security Council. It feels like forever, but I'll say for about the last 15 years.
Very good. And Kurt, could you please do us a favor and tell us, how do the members of your council get value from the services that you provide?
Well, while I was trying to get onto the call, George, I had it on my computer, so I was listening to some of the things that JJ and Steve were reporting on. Our group, and JJ always loves this when I comment on the other councils around the country, was the first council of its kind. It was started in the early 1980s by a group of former law enforcement professionals that were all working in the transportation industry. And they're all having the same problems, experiencing the same type of thefts, similar MOs with the cases, and just kind of arbitrarily started calling one another and decided one day to get together for lunch and discuss their mutual problems. Back in those days, nobody really wanted to talk about the thefts that they were having because you're all in competition for one another's business. That mindset has really changed over the years, where we all know that, by sharing information and getting law enforcement involved with the private sector and educating them and just, teaching them, what's going on in our industry is really, like the most important thing that we can do to help one another. And as our council grew and we began to participate in more national type of conventions, we started, talking to people in different parts of the country. I think JJ's group, when JJ was with Conway, was probably the second group to pop up. And now I guess there's about 7 or 8 of us. JJ, you probably know the number better than I do.
Probably 8 if you, at the moment.
Right, because we have a couple of them in the Los Angeles area, which we don't hear as much from the Los Angeles teams as we do from kind of the Eastern teams. And maybe that's because I live on the Eastern Coast. Are all councils as active as do you guys coordinate when you're going to have your meetings and how active you're going to be and when your conferences are going to be? Or do you just, because you're regional, just have them when you can?
Well, for our group, George, we meet 9 times a year. The 3rd Thursday of every month, January through June. We take July and August off because so many people that have smaller children or young children are on vacation and aren't as readily available. And then we meet September, October, November, and in December we have a holiday luncheon, for all our law enforcement members and our active participants in our group. But we share information, through the use of the BOLO system. Be on the lookout for whatever the situation is, whether it's a commercial burglary, a trailer burglary, tractor trailer theft. And we talk a lot. I get a lot of phone calls, as I know Steve and JJ do, from our law enforcement partners asking for contacts in the private sector on cases that they're working. And likewise, our private sector members are, always looking for law enforcement contacts when they suffer a loss or they need assistance from law enforcement to work an investigation.
And everybody has to understand that the 3 of you have full-time jobs. You're all very busy men. Why would you want to become the chairman of a council with you when you already have so much on your plates?
You guys want to chime in first? I can answer for my company, and it's going to be the answer that I tell everyone at any conference that I'm asked to speak at. It's entirely self-serving for my company because I have all the contacts with the different people around the country, including, JJ's council, Steve's council, the Virginia Carolinas Council that's headed up by Jennifer Bennett from Ralph Lauren Polo. One of the loss prevention manager for the West Coast for our company, Nick Bergonzi, is an active member in the Western States Cargo Theft Group. So for a company that has 2,500 tractors, 7,000 trailers, and over 30 terminals across the United States, it's incredibly important for me to be active with the council in the event that we suffer a loss and I need to get someone on the phone to give me some assistance rather than to call 911. Very
good. And I actually received a text message while you're talking from one of the SETC members that said they do it because you're nuts, actually. You get...
Tell Bob Hastings to mind his own business.
Now, Steve, could you please do us a favor? When you meet with your councils, what percentage of your meetings is that law enforcement? Is it private or corporate? Do you have a good mix of people, or what are those percentages?
Yeah, the law enforcement attendance will vary. Sometimes we'll get as high as maybe 25% police at the meetings, but usually it's maybe 10%. And I mentioned with one of the problems in it, part of that is, hey, the cops got a lot of stuff to do. So
sure.
Going to accounting, I understand that's not on the priority. What is important, though, is glad-handing people at the meeting and making those contacts. So, and those guys know that, but then again, they use other contacts within the council if they need a hand with a case or something. So.
And what other percentage is corporate compared to private?
I'm sorry, you cut out there.
And what percentage is corporate of the people that attend your meetings?
Well, say typically we're at maybe 80% private sector attending the meetings.
Okay.
We're going to range about there, but that'll include carriers, insurers, just the whole gamut of on the private side.
And JJ, could you answer that for your council also?
Yeah, in our Monday meetings, usually have representatives, since we hold most of our meetings in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, representatives from the state police and Fort Worth, probably Grand Prairie, which is, I guess, would be the mecca of cargo theft in the DFW area, and Dallas PD. And those guys come, and then normally they'll be there along with about, anywhere. I think our last meeting we had about 20 industry people there. So, and that's normal for us.
I'm kind of losing JJ here. Kurt, sir, JJ, sir, I'm kind of losing you on your connection. And Kurt, sir, could you let us know like whether percentage in your meetings are the same as JJ's?
Is JJ still talking, or is that mouth harmonica taking them on to the conferences?
Yeah, I think JJ's technology is still trying to catch up with us here, and it's an interesting platform. This happens every now and then.
Okay.
And we lost him. Okay, sir.
Right. Our meetings vary because of the manner in which we hold them. So we have members from the state police from New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Virginia, Maryland, Illinois. South Carolina Law Division gets our alerts that we send out, as does the Louisiana Fusion Center. Don't ask me how they got onto our stuff, but they share information with us, and we share information with them. The FBI from both the New York and New Jersey offices participate with our group. So what we do, because some of our members that are out of state or can't travel here to New Jersey, which makes it convenient for me, but then, impossible for them, we will hold meetings in different states through our corporate members. Every spring, Estee Lauder hosts a meeting for us in Pennsylvania so that our members from the Pennsylvania State Police and local Pennsylvania law enforcement can participate. I want to say April of this year, the New York office of the FBI hosted a meeting for us. The New Jersey State Police is always very gracious in allowing us to have a meeting at one or two of their different facilities. We break it up with different states so that our law enforcement members can attend. But I would say in an average meeting, we probably have a 50-50 mix of private sector people and law enforcement personnel. Now, if we feed them, we probably have about 60% law enforcement, 40% private sector.
And I just got another text message. It's Jack Greenlee that's kind of picking on you a little bit on the saying you guys were nuts, but from SETC saying that even SETC's about 50% private. So that seems pretty standard for everybody. But Kurt, you said something pretty interesting earlier, and that was that in the beginning, everybody felt like you were in competition with one another. How do you break down those barriers so that organizations realize that this isn't a competition? If they're stealing from you today or from somebody else today, they'll be stealing from you tomorrow, or vice versa. How do you break down those barriers? Because in a lot of countries in the world today still, organizations, whether it's the private organization has a loss or the law enforcement, they still hold all this information really close to their chest and they don't share it. Please let everybody know the benefits of sharing this information.
Well, the
And
benefit,
how you break down those barriers.
yeah, the benefits are obvious, particularly to me, and I understand your question. You have to appreciate the fact that almost every one of our private sector members came from law enforcement. So as a result of that, we don't really see, we're not salesmen. So our main objective isn't necessarily bringing in customers, but keeping the customers that we have.
Mhm.
So by sharing information and different trends regarding cargo theft and different things that we see that other people are experiencing the same problems with, we can try and attack those problems and solve them by working with law enforcement. And it really, you're not alienating, your customers. And although many of the customers like to keep their problems quiet, we have a somewhat unwritten rule in our.
I think Kurt just hit the pause button on his speaker. So,
That we're in for meetings.
okay, Kurt, you're back. Okay, for a second there we lost you, sir. So we missed the very ending of that.
Somebody's calling me.
Oh, okay.
We keep our meetings private, and the members know that they shouldn't be going around talking about what we've discussed, unless it's with someone within our group.
Okay, very good. And JJ, sir, you provide a lot of training also from your council. Can you kind of give us an idea of the types of training that you provide and who do you provide that training to?
Well, from the council standpoint, obviously we have our Texas Cargo Summit every year. Partnership with NIC, BNSF Railroad. And all of that is certified training for law enforcement officers in Texas anyway. And a lot of times it's reciprocal if the law enforcement officers from other states have that agreement with Texas. So we provide that training, which is an annual training. But I've also done training related to contraband in commercial shipments. What I call cargo theft investigation 101. Which is the basic information. I think one of the things that law enforcement struggles with when they get a cargo case is the fact that there's a point A to point B, not just carry a shipper and a carrier and a broker and this. So the try to do is be there to help law enforcement or hook them up with the right people when they have an investigation so that they can understand exactly on the case that they have how all these people are involved. So a lot of that kind of training, but mostly it's really the training's put together to educate law enforcement. But also what I try to do is bring awareness to the industry, because my goal really is to drink beer with law enforcement guys and know who they are and be able to call them on the phone. But my real goal is to prevent the crime from ever happening. So if industries, gets the awareness and does the things they should do on the front end, then our relationship with law enforcement can just be the training, the hospitality room, and those kind of things. So really, it's incumbent upon the industry to be aware of what the risks are, and then do what they need to do as an industry to prevent those. And that's kind of what our true goal is. And then our networking with the police is just hopefully that we never have to call them.
No, and I think that's actually a great thing to say, is really what you want to do is prevent all of these from happening anyways, have those connections, but then the awareness is so important. And Steve, you mentioned something earlier about cargo coming off the rails. So when most people think of cargo theft, I think in terms of cargo theft over the road. However, when you start having more theft, either air cargo or off the rails, how do you get that information out to your people? Do they have to come to your meetings, or do you put information out to them via email? And is that secure information as you give it out?
The Chicago area, Kurt, get that phone, will you? Thank you. The Chicago area, if you look at the rail map, it is a hub for the rails. You have certain railroads that run as far east as Chicago stop, and then a different rail picks it up, takes it west. So anything going across country, a ton of it's coming through Chicago. And what I found out here is that every night somebody is burglarizing a train. At least somebody. There's typically several groups that are going after it. The losses are in the millions. The Chicago Railway Association has an association for some of the railroad detectives and special agents. There's some people on our council that attend those meetings. Some of the rail guys attend. So there's definitely information sharing going on there, and that crosses through the council paths. Like I said, the information is shared. A lot of the stolen stuff that's police agency may be investigating some freight that was stolen out of a terminal. That's going to wind up at the same fence that's also fencing the product that was stolen off the train a week ago. So there's a lot of commonalities in what people are looking at.
Okay. And anybody who's watching this, whether you're in Europe or Asia or Latin America, I want you to understand that to put these councils together, again, we're hearing about the benefits that we get from the councils, and it just, sometimes I don't think all the work that goes into it is actually being illustrated here, but there is a lot of work that goes into this. JJ, kind of in closing, is there anything else you'd like to say to everybody about if they were to start their own council, how they would actually get started, the benefits that everybody's going to receive from this, or anything maybe that we just haven't discussed that you'd like to just kind of say in closing?
Well, what I would say is if you join your regional council, if you're operating in that area, you're going to get way more benefit than the dues you pay easily. If you are in an area that doesn't have one, you want to start one, it's a long road to hoe in many ways, but it's really just getting people together and starting to share information. And if you do that, it'll grow on its own and you'll benefit on its own. The other thing is if you started a council and you start sharing information with the other councils, you immediately have a huge, big network. So the networks are there, the expertise is there, all the information sharing is there. It's just a matter of getting in the game. And, if you're sitting on the sidelines, you're missing a lot of opportunity to bring benefit to your company. So, and the other thing I would tell you, which I've done on several, I'll help anybody to try to start, organize, do whatever. Our council is a 501c3 organization. We've been able to that way, provide those trainings, and everything that we do training wise, we do with dues or our fundraising. We don't charge for anybody, charge for the cargo summit. We don't charge law enforcement or the industry. We'll get the lunches paid for. We'll do everything so that there's no cost to anybody to come to attend. We want to get the awareness out. Like I said, the awareness is what allows you as an individual or an industry participant to know what's out there and then deal with the risk in the correct way. And that's really our goal. The network with police is something that we have to have. But like I say, I'd really rather never have to call them.
Absolutely. Thank you, JJ. And Kurt, sir, you've been doing this the longest. Have you had anybody reach out to you internationally and ask you how to start a council or try to piggyback off of your council? Like maybe especially in the Mississauga area?
We have not, and the challenges in Canada have been many.
Yeah.
Several of our company members have suffered losses up there. And I get calls frequently from people asking me if, we have anybody up there from a law enforcement standpoint that can help them. And I found that as much as we love to party with our law enforcement neighbors from the north, when they come to our conferences, they're less apt to do any work when we need them on losses that occur up there.
Very good.
But I will echo, JJ's sentiment about, anyone who needs assistance in trying to, start up a council. When Steve was putting together his group and was looking for some language for their charter, I provided them with some things from our council that we'd used in the past. It is difficult. The hardest part about getting a council started is actually finding the people with the time to actually, put forth an effort to encourage people to attend the meetings and get involved with the councils.
Thank you, sir. And Steve, sir, is there anything you'd like to say in closing?
Yeah, George, you're excluded from this, but for Kurt, JJ, and myself, I have one word: minoxidil. No, I just wanted to say just membership in these councils. The most important thing is the contacts, where you can, if you don't know a need at 2 a.m, you're going to be able to look in your phone and find somebody that you can get a hold of at 2 a.m.
And I've often said that if you're responsible for the cargo security program for your organization and you don't have a single phone number programmed in your phone from somebody from a Transportation Security Council, from the Pharmaceutical Cargo Coalition, or from a task force, then you're not going to be very effective at actually recovering your cargo in the event that you have a loss. And don't depend on other people to have these contacts. You need to get out there and make these contacts yourself. And the Transportation Security Councils are just an invaluable resource that gives you not only the contacts, but you also can get training. And it's always good, as JJ said, to sit down and have a few beers with each other. So that's always a big benefit for attending one of JJ's meetings. And if you guys put on your meetings the same way JJ does, everybody will be happy to go to them. So gentlemen, I really appreciate your time. We appreciate what you guys do in leading these these Transportation Security Councils and ensuring that they're a success. And especially, Steve, taking over a council again that maybe had some apathy, as you said, and building it back up, because it's important that regions like Chicago have an active Transportation Security Council. And I urge anybody globally who has an area that does experience high cargo theft to make sure that you're putting together some kind of council where you can get together and share information between the government, law enforcement, private, and the corporate sectors, and get together, share information, and absolutely put on some training and provide as much benefits as you can to the community. So thank you very much, gentlemen. If anybody else has any questions, as the replay for this goes on, you can put those down in the comments down below, and we'll be happy to have anybody come onto this and also answer those questions for you. So thank you, and we'll talk to you all again very soon. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks very much, George.
Thank you.
Thank you, fellas.
You're welcome, gentlemen. Have a good day.